And to be fair, I'm not going to pull any punches here. There are certainly situations in Street Fighter 6 where you get, like, especially with the degenerate characters like maybe Honda and such, where there are answers, but the craziness is on the defender to defend. And especially here in the first weeks of the game, you're not prepared, you're not ready. Maybe your brain is ready, but your fingers aren't ready for, like, punishing a butt slam or perfect parrying a headbutt. And as we're going to get into in a second here, this was very prominent in a lot of the late games for a certain somebody that won the entire thing. But there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on where in Street Fighter 6, where I don't want to say it's a one-player game by any means, because it's not, because you always have an answer, and that's the key difference maker. But it's certainly it's like you feel the pressure that you have to be ready for the BS that's coming your way, and it's going to come your way because there's a lot of mechanics and a lot of resources for these characters to use. And I actually think that's actually a really good transition, because I think that's a lot of what decided this entire tournament at the final matches was MenaRD pulling out Blanka, and people, I think, widely just not being ready for it. But I want to talk about that a little bit. So what are your first thoughts when you see MenaRD pull out Blanka? Do you expect him to do well? Do you expect him to be unga bunga? Do you like super honed in on the specific strategy? What were you thinking when that popped up?
I mean, here's the thing. I saw previous events where he did use Blanka against Punk. I think a lot of us saw that when Punk was using Cammy, and so it was already kind of foreshadowed, right? But everyone knows that Luke is his main. He's mostly playing Luke, but then he has these matches, funnily enough, usually against some of the absolute best players, where he brings out this counter pick, which is like, is it even a counter pick? Like, this early in the game, it's hard to tell, but like, what is Blanka doing that is so good against characters like Cammy and Jury, who most people consider really strong? Well, and when I'm looking at it, my first gut reaction, without breaking it down and looking at the frame data, and by the way, there's a JM Cross video where he breaks down, I think it's Grand Finals, and looks at what MenaRD's Blanka is doing, and very worthwhile if you're interested in this kind of stuff. It was a cool video and a breakdown. But I see it and I go, I'm watching like the likes of Nephew and Punk just like not ready for all the things that Blanka could potentially do. And what you're seeing is he'll do these goofy balls that can be countered, and even sometimes do get countered, but not enough for it to matter. And he's jumping at places where you're like, oh, they'll anti-air. Oh, they weren't ready for the anti-air. And it felt almost like there is so much unknown potential from Blanka. And in this game, the mental stack is just very, very prominent, and something that you really have to contend with. And if you don't know everything that the other character can do, and they're jumping around at weird angles and going backwards and forwards and weird, thises and that's, and throwing Blanka Chan dolls at you. If you don't know all that stuff, you're just sitting there like a deer in the headlights, and that's all someone like MenaRD needs to sniff you out, make you incredibly predictable, and take advantage of it. And I think that's what we saw here. Yeah, like, I don't think, like, I could be wrong, okay? I'm not a Blanka expert, all right? So don't clip this and throw it in my face 6 months from now, you know what I mean? But I don't think this is going to be a long-term counter pick from MenaRD. I think he's just, like, as you're saying, I think he's kind of using the fact that the game is new, because we were talking about, you need to be very on point with your defense, but it's so new. How can you be ready with everything, right? And that kind of thing is extremely potent, because another thing you brought up was, so you can counter the Blanka balls, but is that even enough? And that's kind of what we saw from Nephew. He was on point.
He DP'd like 6 of them in a row, and by 6 I mean like maybe 3, but still that feels like 6. And it didn't matter. It was like, okay, a little bit of damage here and there. It didn't deter Mena from obviously continuing to do it. And every time you block one of those things, that's like almost a bar of drive meter. And if you get hit with it, that's that's a bar of drive meter out of your mental stack. And like, he's just all over the place. And you didn't see him doing a lot of parries. You didn't see him doing a lot of anti-airs. It just felt like they were overwhelmed with too many potential options, so they did none.
Yeah, and I mean, to MenaRD's credit, I mean, of course, to his credit, he's an amazing player. He's 2-time Capcom Cup champ, and he was clearly the best player at CEO. There's no doubt about that. But what I want to say about this Blanka pick is that it's really interesting that he brings it out in the way that he does, because it feels like he's really just taking hard advantage of the fact that this is a rarely played character. And right now, people haven't had enough time to do counter strategies against most characters. They've been focusing on Ken, they've been focusing on JP, and we saw that in the stats, right? They've been focusing on Jury, which we didn't see that much results of in the stats, but still. Nobody's been labbing these characters that nobody's playing. Like, characters like Dalsim and Blanca are probably going to be causing upsets for a while because they aren't the main focus. You don't have time for that right now. You know what I mean?
I remember
saying
to a friend, and I think it was week 1, I'm terrified of the idea. We were talking about like characters that we've played against. I was like, I'm terrified of playing in a tournament and running into a Blanca because I'm not going to know what to do. And I mean, that's on me, and this was a few weeks ago. I've looked at a little bit of Blanca stuff and got some experience. But yeah, like I feel the same way.
Yeah, and that's just how it is. So with that in mind, I think that people are going to be looking more into Blanca. You already saw it from Punk a bit, right? Because he switched off his main Cammy to play Jury in the matchup instead. And based on the matches, I don't think Jury is bad against Blanca by any means. It's just they don't have the matchup experience against Blanca that MenaRD has against Jury with the character.
Sure. And 2 things there on MenaRD. 1, he's a world-class player. I think you can't even argue at this point with 2 Capcom Cup titles in the Street Fighter V game that he's the best in the world at Street Fighter V. He proved that. And then here, and he's been making a total presence, and he's been establishing himself just with the same momentum here in Street Fighter 6. Yeah, some of it is obviously people didn't know the matchup. Some of it is MenaRD being amazing with his reads. And I would say I saw shades of his birdie with this Blanca pick because it wasn't that he was doing things that didn't have counters. It was that he was mixing things up so well. And that's, I think, his strongest aspect as a player is that he can get into your mind and do the things that, sure, they're unsafe. Sure, it's a DP in your face while on offense. It's a command grab from forever away that you just, for whatever reason, he knew you weren't going to be ready for. I think Blanca, both because people don't know, but also just because of the way the character is designed. Even in the, I'll do a Blanca ball and it'll either be the short one that'll just put me up in your face, or it'll be the long one that you're actually going to have to block, and you have to deal with those differently. Are you going to be ready for that? MenaRD is ready to pounce and take absolute advantage, and I think this also factors in, or is a display of how smart of a player he is, that he's taking the current situation and he's playing to his strengths in a way that gets him the results in CEO right off the bat. He's going into Evo real hot right now.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Luke, a character we've barely even touched on, I also think is a really strong character, and that's his main weapon, right?
And much more traditional Street Fighter, Shoto type, solid, plays the fundamentals and has just like straight good marks across the board. Isn't really wonky, isn't going to hit you with a ton of gimmicks like Blanca. And now, man, when you've got those as your 2 options, no one's going to be ready.
No, exactly. And I think that might be something to segue into our other discussion of who's actually strong right now in Street Fighter 6.
Hey, thanks for checking out that clip from our Talkin' Block CEO 2023 discussion. If you'd like to hear the entire episode, you can do so right here. And if you'd just like another clip similar to this one, well, you can do so right here.